Hey guys, Comic Boom here to give you my top 10 DC comics for 2022. It was a very up and down year for DC. It really, really was. Lots of downs, but there were some highlights, and this video is focusing on the best that DC had to offer, in my opinion, for the year of 2022. So without further ado, let's get right to it. I want to give a shout out to all these wonderful artists and creators because while there was some down points in 2022 at DC, it did have some high points. And hopefully we can feel a little bit better knowing going into 2023 that DC can build on its creative successes in 2022. So without further ado, let's talk on my number 10. Number 10, coming in at number 10 is Batman the Knight. You know, I gotta say, Chip Zdarsky has done such a phenomenal job with Batman the Knight, and he's doing a really good job on Batman. And this series just continues. This series is actually technically over, but it sort of ties into his Batman series. It even ties in a little bit to Batman Incorporated. Essentially, it tells the story of Batman, of a young Bruce Wayne in his first few years training, traveling the world, training to be the best that he can be in terms of the fighter, training his body and mind, and ultimately meeting a young man much like himself, but with a different view toward lethal force, and that is this Anton character who will become ultimately Ghostmaker. My favorite issue in the Batman the Knight series was issue 9, where Bruce Wayne has an adventure with a young Zatanna, and it's just so well done. Zdarsky nails the understanding of Zatanna, her father Zatara, and Batman himself, Bruce Wayne, realizes that magic is not for him because Bruce Wayne is not about control. He's not particularly good at, Bruce Wayne is all about control. Batman is about control. He's always controlling. He needs to control his environment. But in order to be an effective magic user, you have to be very, very good at letting go, being able to surrender to the way of things, just being, in order to allow the magic in. At least that's the way Zatanna explained it. What the hell do I know? I'm not a magician, nor am I a sorceress, but I really liked the way it played out, and it was a very good interplay between Zatanna and Bruce Wayne, and the entire series itself was pretty damn good too. I had some issues with Ra's al Ghul showing up because I didn't feel Ra's al Ghul had anything to do with Batman's training in the comics, nor should he be. I prefer that's more of the movie continuity, but I'll give Zdarsky a slide on that. It was still a really good series, and he is tying it into his Batman, and we know a little bit more about Anton slash Ghostmaker, particularly going into Batman Incorporated. Batman Incorporated was also a decent comic. It's more of a runner-up, but it didn't make my top 10 list. All right, so coming in at number 9 is the New Golden Age. Now, in fact, this is really just a one-shot, but I'm including in this New Golden Age because it's just the New Golden Age along with Stargirl, The Lost Children, and it sort of came in at the tail end of 2022, and so I'm sort of including it all together here. So I'm including the New Golden Age, Stargirl, The Lost Children, and even the first issue of the Justice Society, which is really good. But I'm sort of including the Justice Society into the New Golden Age along with Stargirl, The Lost Children. Jeff Johns is doing such a good job getting me excited again about the Justice Society, the way that he's going back into the different time periods, utilizing the death of Dr. Fate, the coming back of Per Degaton, also coming back of this new character called the Childminder that we think might be a new character, might not be a new character, a new villain. We don't know. These lost children of the Golden Age, that's the true legacy of the DC universe. And DC's really struggled with legacy. Jeff Johns is doing legacy right with the Lost Children, because isn't it funny how we're learning more about DC's legacy through children that we never knew existed before than we are through DC's very unfortunately bad attempt at creating legacy with John Kent and Yara Flor characters that just really didn't work out in 2022 very well, at least in my mind. And a lot of the forced nature of a lot of the other failed experiments. I call them experiments, even though they're not. But, you know, again, Nubia, John Kent, Yara Flor, Aquaman mythology. Like, there's lots of things that just, it didn't fly. It didn't work. Teen Titans Academy, really failures overall. Probably the most successful of them all. You could argue, perhaps say it was the most successful was John Kent, in terms of at least Tom Taylor did a good job. You know, having to work with something that it was fairly controversial, despite the aging up of John Kent. He did a good job of putting lipstick on the pig of John Kent. Still not enough lipstick available to do it, to make that pig look pretty, but yeah, it is what it is. But in any event, Golden Age, that's at number 9. Coming in at number 8 is Robin. You know, I've been very hard on Joshua Williamson for 2022, but Robin was really good. I'm not a fan of his Flash run. I thought I liked Infinite Frontier. I love Justice League Incarnate. I enjoyed the first few issues of Dark Crisis until it went off the rails, and Dark Crisis ended up being, to me, such a huge disappointment. But his Robin was really good, and one of the things that makes his Robin even better was, thankfully, Mark Waid with World's Finest, tying it into that, leading into Lazarus Planet. Robin ties in at the end of the Robin series into World's Finest storyline, into the Devil Nezha, into ultimately what will be Lazarus Planet, which will be starting off in January next month, so January 2023. So this was a really good series. What the Robin series did, it highlighted one of Joshua Williamson's, it actually highlighted his strengths and his failure with Dark Crisis, his failure with the Flash highlights Joshua Williamson's huge weakness. And his weakness is he's not very good at plot points. He's not very good at working with comic book science, because he forgets the rules he makes. The rules of Dark Crisis, he couldn't even figure out who the villain was. Dark Crisis doesn't really have more of a villain, is it a force of nature? What is it? Doesn't matter. It wasn't very well plotted. He's not good at plotting. But what Robin shows is that Joshua Williamson, when it's just fisticuffs, when it's just martial arts, when it's very basic and there's no comic book science that he has to try to wrap his small mind around, he can actually do some decent character work. And Robin is actually a very good series. It was fun. It was action-packed, largely because he let the artist do most of the work. And the plotting was actually not bad. And, you know, building on the plotting, because it ends, Robin dealing with a tournament on Lazarus Island and all these new characters, which again, that was the way to introduce new characters, introduce the next generation of heroes. I got to tell you, between Robin and the new legacy of heroes that we have there, along with some of the other characters that we have, which have come to the forefront with Mark Waid and World's Finest, and some of the other series which we're going to be touching on here. Robin was a lot of fun, and that's what we need more of. We need more fun. Robin was a tease of a lot of fun in the DC universe, and I got to give Josh Williamson props, because I've been hard on that guy more than once, and when he does something as good as Robin, I want to give him a shout out for it, for sure. Okay, coming in at number 7 is Nightwing. Tom Taylor Nightwing. Look, Nightwing's. What more can I say about Nightwing? Nightwing is plot-wise. Nightwing is not a particularly. It's not an intricate plot. It's very, very plotting. As a matter of fact, the first, Tom Taylor's entire run, the plot's been very straightforward. Basically, Nightwing, Dick Grayson, moves to Bloodhaven after Alfred dies, and he inherits $1 billion from Alfred. He creates a foundation, he becomes a philanthropist, and he uses the money to help the homeless kids in Bloodhaven. And meanwhile, a corrupt mayor that ends up being, or what we think is a corrupt mayor, being controlled by Blockbuster, ultimately ends up being Melinda Zuko, his sister, and we get that revelation from Tom King, and Blockbuster is sort of taken off the playing field through a long series of chapters, a long series of misadventures and adventures and action-packed comic comic book adventures, etc., all focus on the fact that everybody loves Nightwing. This is a love fest for Nightwing. Barbara Gordon loves Nightwing. The Teen Titans love Nightwing. The Justice League loves Nightwing. 2022 was the year of Nightwing, people. It was the year of Nightwing. Everybody loves Dick Grayson. And that's what Tom Taylor has exemplified. One could make a joke out of it. I could probably exaggerate it, but actually I couldn't. It's, good Lord, between Nightwing and Dark Crisis was not a sequel to the original Crisis, despite DC trying in vain to make it that. It wasn't. You know, just because you're bringing back the Infinite Earths does not a Crisis make. Sorry, you need more than that. You need a plot. But unfortunately, Williamson blew that. But talking about Nightwing, Dark Crisis is a Nightwing story. Nightwing did awesome. Did you know that Nightwing could overcome the Great Darkness just by thinking about Batman? Or thinking about the Dark Cave and thinking about all his Batman training? It was ridiculous, but it was meant to prop up Nightwing, and it did. Nightwing is now propped up again. He didn't need to be propped up. Nobody DC is so desperate for a successful legacy character that they put all their efforts on really one character that came out shining in 2022, and that was Nightwing. But in fact, arguably, maybe they overdid it, but all their best efforts did pay off because Nightwing is beloved. And we're going into issue 100. People are hoping issue 100 will be a proposal between Barbara Gordon and Nightwing. I don't see that happening, unfortunately, because why? Because we're going to be getting the Teen Titans are replacing the Justice League, and it's probably going to be a while before we see Babs and Nightwing tie the knot. They don't want to put all their eggs in one basket so soon. That's probably going to be a highlight later on in 2023. But Nightwing by Tom Taylor is a lot of fun. This heartless character villain is kind of cool. Moving into 2023, this heartless villain does want to try to take out Nightwing and destroy his legacy in Bloodhaven. But all right, so getting into number 6. Number 6 on my list is The Human Target. Tom King, what can I say? This is a... Tom King always works with great artists. Arguably one of the best artists he's ever worked with has got to be Greg Smallwood. This series has just been absolutely... For me, this hits everything I love about so many genres that I like. I love James Bond. I love the 50s. I love the 60s. I love the 50s and 60s music, even though there's music in here. But I listen to 60s music actually when I read this comic. I love beautiful women, and thanks to Greg Smallwood, I get treated to beautiful women every time I pick up an issue of Human Target. And I love a good story, and I love a good dialogue. And Tom King nails all of it here. And I know Tom King is divisive, but frankly, I love well over 90% of what he writes. This is phenomenal. This will go down historic as probably one of the best series. I would probably bet this series will be this will probably be on many people's top 10 list. And I would go so far as to say this is going to be on people's top 10 list probably for when this decade is over, because it's that good. And Greg Smallwood has really made a name for himself, and that guy's going to be going places. And I tell you what, people talk a lot about Tom King. Tom King is a very good writer, and he wrote so many great books, but between Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow was also the only reason I didn't put Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow on my top 10 list was because I put it on last year's top 10 list, and I don't want to be redundant because I wanted to be fair to some other comic books. But Tom King, he's got his act together, man. He's firing on all cylinders, and kudos to him. And I'm even enjoying the first issue of Danger Street, but we'll see how that turns out. I don't like Tom King's Batman, but I got to give him credit here for Human Target. All right, so coming in at number 5 is The Flash. People might be surprised why this Flash isn't higher on my list. Well, the fact is that there's a lot of good comics for DC, and the reality is that in terms of consistency and fun and always putting a smile on my face, if that was the only criteria, Flash would be it, because Flash would be number 1. Because this Jeremy Adams has done just a great job. He has completely redeemed Wally West in a way that is believable, that makes you love this guy. everybody, I want to be Wally West. I want to love my children as much, and I do, as much as Wally West loves his kids. I want to love my wife as much as Wally West loves his wife, and I do. I want to have the life of Wally West, to work hard and to have a sense of humor, to have a purpose, and to even have a rogues gallery that respects you. I mean, everything about Wally West is perfect. Wally West is the perfect reason why. He's an example of why Barry Allen should have stayed dead. We don't need Barry Allen. Barry Allen is a redundancy. He was killed off. He was killed off in the original Crisis. And boy, they missed an opportunity. Joshua Williamson, your big kill in Dark Crisis was getting Beast Boy shot in the head, and you couldn't even have the courage to kill off that useless character. Why didn't you kill off Barry Allen again? We don't need him. He's a redundancy. Because Wally West is the way to go, and thank God for Jeremy Adams, man. Thank God. What a great series, and it continues to be great. Going into 1 Minute War into January 2023. We're starting off at super speed in January with 1 Minute War. I can't wait. Jeremy Adams did a really good interview with my co-reviewer and friend Jace of the Comic Source. Google the Comic Source. .com, the Comic Source podcast, and listen to that review with Jeremy Adams. It's really great. And he also interviewed actually Tom King as well, and I believe a number of other writers that are going to be on this list here. But all right, so coming in at number 4 is Action Comics. Philip Kennedy Johnson. I mean, he's done a very respectable job of almost doing his own version. Well, it's his own version of the Warlord saga. Superman taking on Mongol. It was a long story. It dragged on longer than it should have, but it was good. Philip Kennedy Johnson inherited Action Comics from the absolute abortion destruction that was done to it by Bendis. The Bendis era it will never be seen in a positive light for what he did to Superman. I hope DC learns its lesson, because we're still healing and reeling and healing from the post-traumatic stress that was the Bendis effect on the Superman mythology in the DC universe. But at least with the War World saga, we got Superman back in top form, and even without his powers, he was able to defeat Mongol. He ends up bringing back some orphan Theologians, which will now form part of the Superman family, to try to appease fans who are still pissed off that he aged up John Kent. I'm one of those fans who's pissed off that they aged up John Kent. So now the Superman family is huge. You got good Lord, you got so many people in the Superman family now that, quite frankly, I wasn't particularly interested in where the Superman family is going forward, but I love the War World saga. And frankly, with as of issue 150, the secret identity is back. Superman, Lex Luthor, God, man, I love you, Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor essentially killed Manchester Black through various experiments in order to utilize Manchester Black's telepathy, combined it with War World tech to make the world forget that Superman is Clark Kent. Thank God. It was such a stupid idea. Lex Luthor, thank you. I mean, even Batman secretly is glad that's over, because the irresponsible behavior, the writing out of character, as if Superman would ever give up that secret. Thank you, Lex Luthor, for doing that. And because the secret identity is back, at least now there's more to look forward to story-wise for Action Comics and Superman, particularly for a young John Kent who has to get a secret identity, has to dump Jay Nakamura, has to start dating Saturn Girl like I've always wanted. I'm a shipper. I'm a Saturn Girl, John Kent shipper. That's what I am. It's probably the one thing that Bendis did with the Legion of Superheroes, pretty much the only thing that I really liked. He sort of, had a little thing between Saturn Girl and John Kent. That's what you do. But in any event, I digress. Let's move on. Coming in at number 3 on my list is Dark Knights of Steel. And Tom Taylor's on this list twice. In fact, I believe he's the only person on this list twice. He was on for Nightwing. I also put him on for Dark Knights of Steel. It's cliche and a little tropey, but that whole idea of, taking superheroes out of their traditional setting and putting them in another type of historical or medieval setting or some type of other setting. But damn, it sells comic books, and if it's a good story, we're going to enjoy it. We got DC v Vampires, we got Deceased, we got, and Tom Taylor writes Deceased. We know Tom Taylor, he was famous for writing Injustice being arguably the greatest and best comic book series of the entire decade from 2010 to 2020. It's that good, and it is. I love the medieval setting here. I love the idea that with Jor-El and Laura coming to Earth with a young Kal-El in medieval times, and essentially creating their own kingdom. And we've got all these heroes and concept of these heroes, from Harley Quinn to Poison Ivy to Wonder Woman to Supergirl to Kara to John Henry Irons, Natasha Irons, to John Constantine to Satana. All these characters, the Joker, Lex Luthor, Green Lantern, a mixture of all these mythologies, including Martian Manhunter. A little bit of a spoiler there. Let me tell you something. This is a real fun series. Tom Taylor is masterful, not only of weaving and taking these characters and putting them in very different types of settings, but he's really, really good at the character work. Because it's one thing, anybody can come up with an interesting plot, but an interesting plot that isn't supported by the characters themselves and the motivations of the characters moving the plot forward, you compromise the story. Well, Tom Taylor is very good, and he's a master at providing character moments while significant plot points are being made. Now, it can be criticized that Tom Taylor at times will sacrifice plot in favor of character, moving a character forward, but that's not always a bad thing. And regardless, mileage can vary in terms of one's point of view on that. But it all comes down to how effective the story is, and there's no question here that Dark Knights of Steel is absolutely entertaining. And kudos to Taylor for getting on this list twice. All right, so coming in at number 2 is Mark Waid's Batman Superman World's Finest. Now, Mark Waid and Dan Mora, man, I've got the poster. It was funny when World's Finest, when the first issue of World's Finest hit, my retailer gave me a poster. He says, Rocky, do you want a World's Finest poster? And I said, does a bear in the woods? Of course I'll take it. And I did, and it's been up there, and I like to think I gave the entire comic series, a good luck charm, because that thing's been on my wall for a long time. But in any event, I don't know if anyone can see that on my wall all the time, because I often do these videos at a different angle, but suffice to say, this has been a great series. What Mark Waid does, Mark Waid is always... Mark Waid has fulfilled everything I'd hope he would. Mark Waid is a Superman expert. He has forgotten more about Superman than I will ever know. And I've been collecting DC Comics for 43, 44 years now. It's insane. The man is an encyclopedia of Superman knowledge. And he's bringing... DC seems to be moving into a more Silver Age type of sensibility now. And with Superman's powers becoming ultra powerful now, as established in Action Comics 1050, where he can transcend time and space almost with a thought. It's his powers. He's uber powerful now. And with the more Silver Age kind of storytelling that we're getting in World's Finest, where we get the first 6-issue story arc was an early adventure where Batman and Superman and Supergirl and Dick Grayson as Robin take on the Devil Nizha, and they end up caging him in a cave, which is later revealed through the Robin series and through Batman v Robin series to be Lazarus Island. That Lazarus Island being that island where Robin had that tournament in order to determine the best fighter. That was written by Joshua Williamson. Robin also being number 8 on my top 10 list. So all of these things are connected, and this alludes to what DC needs to embrace, and what their editors have to understand what works. When you remember that you're creating a universe. Remember that as bad as Dark Crisis was, at least now, if we're moving into a Dawn of the DCU, remember that connective tissue, even if it's just a little bit, that connective tissue between your characters, between the stories, is so important. It is possible. It really is possible. Because we got like 80, how many decades of proving that it is possible to tell stories in a continuity-rich universe. And if a writer can't do it, fire them. Or better yet, have the brain power or the intelligence to not hire them in the first place. I won't name names, but there's an awful lot of very poor writers at DC that just can't get a handle on it because they don't know the material. And I don't understand why you're hiring writers that aren't familiar with the source material or aren't even slightly familiar with the characters. I mean, to me, that's like hiring an actor, giving them the script, giving them the lines, and they don't bother reading the lines, and they show up on the set, and they're like, what do I say? I'll just say whatever I want. And then the movie is shit. Is that surprising? Of course not. But I digress. World's Finest. This is what you want. We got the boy Thunder is a character that Mark Waid introduced that we know is destined to become Magog. Mark Waid, this guy wrote Kingdom Come. And now he's teasing that, he's now showing us the origins of Magog. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Just good stuff. Mark Waid knows how to tease the readers. And he knows what he's doing. Stick with World's Finest. I'm sure this is on most people's top 10 lists, not just for DC, but for all comics. All right, so now we're going to get into my number one comic from DC, and it's a little bit of a cheat, but I didn't care. And it's Nice House on the Lake. Now, I say it's a cheat because Nice House on the Lake is Black Label, and it's not part of the mainstream DC universe. I actually wish it kind of was, but I can't wish that. I mean, actually, when you think about it, Nice House on the Lake has a dark crisis in it because the world is actually destroyed, and these 10 people that are sort of trapped and living on this nice house by the lake, which is this environment that their friend Walter saved and placed them on, where he gives them all their heart's desires and everything they want is given to them on this nice house by the lake. And how this can be a horror. I mean, it's a good thing to be saved from Armageddon, like the 10 people in Nice House on the Lake are. It's one thing to be saved from Armageddon, and it's another thing to be protected and giving a nice house on the lake. It's one thing to be able to ask for whatever you want and be given it. But what if you know that somebody controls that environment, controls everything about that environment, that you're puppets on a string, and that everything in this beautiful environment, even though you've been saved from Armageddon, well, do you have free will? What if you don't have free will? What if the environment's created for you? Does it matter to you if it's created? Does it matter to you that you actually know who is controlling the strings? Or do you want to control the strings? And does it matter? Does it matter if your life is controlled by you or by somebody else? I mean, if you're happy in either scenario, what does it matter if somebody else controls the strings of your life or if you do, as long as you're happy? Is happiness an illusion? All these questions are answered or asked and posed, and it encourages the reader to answer the question. And James Tynion does an amazing job. Issue 12 wrapped up here in December, just on December 27th, the week of December 27th. Fantastic. This is hands down, this is my favorite James Tynion work to date. I loved Something is Killing the Children. This is slightly better than Something is Killing the Children. It's a tie. And I mean, the art was fantastic. Jordi Belair on the colors. I mean, I forget Martinez. Alvaro Martinez Bueno is on the art for Nice House on the Lake. Jordi Belair on the colors. Well, easily my favorite DC comic of the year. And if you think it's a cheat, then consider World's Finest to be the best. So just to review, number one on the list was Nice House on the Lake. Number two was World's Finest. Third was Dark Knights of Steel. Fourth was Action Comics. Fifth was The Flash. Sixth was Human Target. 7 was Nightwing. 8 was Robin. 9 was the new Golden Age, which also included Stargirl, The Lost Children, and the first issue of Justice Society, since they're all kind of linked. And 10 was Batman the Knight. And so, guys, that basically sums up. That sums up my top 10 list. Let me know what your list was. Do you agree with my list? Do you disagree with it? Why? Let me know in the comments below. And I wish everyone happy holidays and soon to be a happy new year. And here's looking to a big and bright and beautiful dawn of the DCU moving into January. I got to tell you, I do get some preview copies, and I've read a good portion of January's DC Comics, and I think that we've got a lot to look forward to. There's definitely some surprises, and I already feel better about this year knowing the bulk of what January is alone. I would argue that in January alone makes knowing the content of DC Comics for January alone makes me feel better than for 2023 already than I did cumulatively about 2022, despite the fact that 2022, as I've shown, in my view, has had some good DC Comics. So guys, until next time, I'm out of here.